This conference will now be recorded.
All right, welcome to the virtual meeting of the RTM's Town Government Worker Administration, TGS&A. This meeting is being recorded. This is Tuesday, June 2nd, 2020. It's approximately 7:36 p.m. My name is Frank Kemp, Chairman of TGS&A Committee. May we do a roll call to confirm who is in attendance for those of us who are not accustomed to calling them squares. Alphabetically then, Vinnie Arjun, David Bain. Might just say here. Okay.
Here.
John Bolton. John, your microphone is off. We can't hear you.
All right, I'm trying to help the echo. I'm here.
Yeah.
Carlo Cantavero. I don't hear Carlo. Will Cusack. Jay Hardison.
Here.
Derek Lublin.
Here.
Harry McLaughlin.
Here.
Harry McLaughlin.
I'm here. Maybe without a photo, but I'm on.
All right, Cassie McSeary.
I'm here on the go-to.
Joe Michelli.
Here.
Rob Werner.
Here.
Ed Scott Zimmerman.
Here.
Here.
All right, it should be noted a quorum is present. Let's turn our attention to the agenda for this evening. List of 3 matters. Mike, will you show us the agenda for the Okay, we scroll down a little bit. We'll see if there are 3 matters for A, approval of the minutes for the prior meeting, B, review of a proposed change to town ordinances, and C,
Hey,
adjournment.
Scott, you have
Okay,
your
Michael.
computer and phone going?
We're getting feedback from somebody.
All right. Now on the
Maybe
first,
everybody except Frank could mute their phone, and then when they need to talk, unmute, so we can figure out where the noise is coming from. Okay, so Frank, everybody's muted, is muting their mic except you, so go right ahead.
all right. So on the first topic, we should all have copies of the minutes of October 21st, 2019. Mike, would you just flash them on the screen for us? Fine. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I have one comment, Frank, that to correct the spelling of my last name in the absent folk, which I was among. It's MC capital LACHLIN. Thank you.
Thank you,
With
Harry.
that correction, I would make the motion.
Second.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
And do I have, thank you, Rob. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we can take that down now so we can see who's waving their hands around. Before we vote, I should note that Town Council has reminded us that a member has the authority to approve minutes of meetings they did not attend. That to me is new. Shall we vote? Members voting in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? The ayes have it. I think it's unanimous.
I'll abstain. I wasn't there no matter what town council says. I'm not going to vote on them.
Well, you're fine. We have one abstination, although you don't have to.
Okay.
Okay,
David,
nonetheless, Bain abstaining. Now we move to the proposed resolution that will give the moderator more flexibility in setting the date for RTM meetings. Mike, would you flash the resolution on our screens, please? Thank you. And you'll see that this note, that this draft includes the changes that were suggested in early March and approved by the Rules Committee last week for distribution to the RTM and inclusion in the warning and the agenda for the meeting on June 8th, next Monday. I assume that you've had a chance to review the document and that you may have questions concerning it. So Mike, can you take that down now? So, are there any questions concerning the resolution? All right.
Well,
May
Mr.
I have
Chairman,
a motion?
I'll just bring up one thing. I just want to, and I don't think that you can put this into the wording. Be interesting to know what the Rules Committee, when they, basically, I raised this previously, which is reasonable cause. And is that the exact, yeah, reasonable cause. I trust moderators in the future are not going to, like, we don't have enough votes to pass something as a reasonable cause. I mean, it has to be something that is, I think, directly, in other words, there's a reason we can't meet, not the reason we shouldn't meet, as in, let's say it's whatever the issue is, that the closed vote, and the moderator has to make sure that it's not a case where, well, 5 people can't make it, so we're not going to be able to pass this kind of a thing. I just wanted to say that for the record.
Frank?
I agree with John.
Thank
This
you.
is David Bain. I mean,
And Jay?
Yeah, I
I
was
don't
going
really-
to say the same thing. It gives a couple of conditions, inclement weather and a few other conditions initially, to John's point, but then it just says at the sole discretion of the moderator, which there's got to be, we have to have some defined reasons why the moderator in his sole discretion can do that, I think.
I guess my question, maybe I should have raised this when you asked for questions, is why do we need this? What is the impetus of this? We've never had a problem with this issue before. Even in COVID-19, I mean, we canceled meetings and meetings got rescheduled as special meetings. Why do we need the ability to reschedule an already scheduled meeting?
It's only the selection of the date of the meeting, not rescheduling a meeting. Okay, and actually what the background on this is, as we know, is that the way the schedule is set up now, it does conflict with some religious holidays from time to time and national holidays, which causes an aggravating schedule. So this gives the moderator the flexibility, gives the moderator via us, gives us the ability to change the dates within 10 days. And it was suggested from a member of this committee when we had this in draft that we put the cause in there so that the moderator is not going to act capriciously or not let people know why he changed it. So there we are.
Mr. Chairman?
Robbie.
Yes, thank
Yes.
you. Just a couple of things. One, I guess I've only been on this committee a year, but it's my understanding we don't debate the why when we're given an ordinance like this. We're just here to make sure that it's presented in the best way to accomplish that for which it's put forth. Is that our directive?
I don't think I understood your question.
Well, David asked, why do we need this in the first place? And I think that's beyond our purview, no?
Over the last couple of years, RTM meetings in the fall have fallen on the Jewish holidays. And we wanted to avoid scheduling a meeting on any religious holiday that would come up. It just happened to be
get
this
that.
last. You got it?
Anyway, okay, I'll move on from that one. Just on the word, what's reasonable, what should be in the negative, the positive. My personal feeling is that you can, if you want to pay for it, you can hire a lawyer to argue the definition of any word in the dictionary. I believe we all remember a time when there was much to do about what the definition of is. So to me, my personal opinion, reading it over, reasonable means reasonable, and I'm good with it. That's it.
Thank you. Other observations?
Frank, just one quickly.
Yes, David.
Well, if the purpose of the open-ended opportunity to reschedule meetings is religious holidays, why don't we write that into this ordinance instead of just having this, as John points out, this kind of this freewheeling ability of the moderator to reschedule meetings at any time whatsoever? I mean, with all due respect to Rob, I kind of disagree with the fact that we're not allowed to ask why. When I went to law school, that's the first thing they taught us to ask whenever we were posed a question. Why do you want to know? Why do you want to do this? Because that forms your opinion as to what needs to be done and how to address it. And if the issue here is religious holidays, then we should say so. We should say, instead of, in the event it's decided by the moderator to reschedule, just say, in the event of inclement weather, power failure, or similar circumstances, religious holidays, etc. Why are we giving the moderator the sole discretion to reschedule meetings? I don't get it. I'm not in favor of this ordinance the way it's written. I plan to vote no.
I just want to take that. If that's
sorry, David,
I stand corrected. David, that's
in effect,
a good reason to ask the question.
Go ahead, Robbie.
Thank you. I just wanted to tell David, I didn't really get where he was going with it, but it's a perfectly good reason to ask the question. I take it back. Strike it from the record.
Well, I mentioned the fact of religious holidays, and I know that I can't really tell you specifically, but a couple of years ago, the dates fell in oddly with Memorial Day and just national holidays, Memorial Day and Veterans Day and all that kind of business. So this is just sort of the purpose of this is to break it open a little bit, give us, not so much the moderator, but give us all the opportunity to move the date of the meeting that has been called for in the charter, 10 days one way or the other, and move on, get a life. Go on.
I think that's an easy fix.
David, can I just make two comments? Because I think one you're going to agree with, which is a religious holiday is an event that you can see coming a year ahead of time. So whether or not the moderator needs to make an emergency action, it seems to me kind of, I get that it's in the code that the dates are in the code at this point. It has to be certain Mondays of certain months. And I think that is, but I would think that that's something that we don't need to have the moderator fix in his sole judgment. The second thing is that, just to give David some context about Rob's comments, if we had, like, when the plastic bag thing came through, it was kind of like we had at both times the committee was like, okay, we'll fix the wording to make it just right. But then do we get a chance, secondly, to say whether we agree with it or not? And we split them apart. So I think there was a certain amount of that coloring. Rob, I just wanted to kind of give you a little context in some of the history of the committee. So.
No, I get that. I understand. And, but I still think it's important to know why, so you can frame the language in a way that addresses the specific reasons. And if it's religious holidays or national holidays that need to be addressed, we should write that into the ordinance. I have no opposition to that. I just am concerned about mischief, because that's what happens in government.
I agree
given the opportunity,
Well, we're at the point where this had been through draft and been discussed, and then it went through rules. And
Frank, you had Jay's hand raised to talk.
Okay, I'll recognize you in a moment. I just wanted to advise you that the language that is in here now was suggested by members of this committee back in March, and we accommodated the suggestions that were made by this committee in March, forwarded them to town council, who embodied them in the resolution that we have on the table. our role this evening will be, after discussion, to vote as to whether we recommend the overall, the RTM, approve it or disapprove it. And there'll be discussion if there's time that next Monday night to some of the finer points may come up. So we will have the opportunity in a few minutes to vote whether to move this forward as with approval or disapproval. If somebody does vote to disapprove it, I'm going to ask you to send me an email, because the hearing on this and the note taking is a little difficult, because then I will include any dissenting comments in the report that goes to the RTM. You've all heard that, you know, such and such committee met on such and such a night with so many people voting, 5 in favor, 6 against. And by the way, here are the reasons, you know, why people were against it. So if you do vote against it, I would invite you, please, to send me the reasons so that I can incorporate them in the report. Now, Jay, a moment ago, had his hand up.
Thank you. So per David's comments, if you don't define all the reasons why the moderator in his or her sole discretion can make this call, you're going to run into the problems that John mentioned initially, which it could be arbitrary or capricious as to why the moderator doesn't have the votes, et cetera. And then I have a question. Who drafted this actual proposed ordinance?
I took a first swipe at it. I exposed it to the committee and got comments back, consolidated those comments and forwarded them over to town council.
And did the town council adjust or make any amendments to what you sent over?
No, in fact, it was paid us a compliment. He said this is, well, you know, nicely done, and he incorporated the suggestions that we have.
All right, thank you.
All right, is there any further discussion? Rob?
Robbie has his hand up. Robbie has his hand
Yeah,
up.
his mic is off.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you. Quick comment. If there is some sort of dystopian future in which this meeting is the last known record of our kind, I want to say here that on June 2nd in the year 2020, I am not as optimistic as some of my brethren about the ability of the printed word to prevent mischief in government. And with that, I have nothing more to say.
Duly noted. Other comments before we vote? David?
Just one more quick one, if I could, because since we'll be doing a virtual meeting at the next RTM meeting, I think discussion among RTM members is going to be difficult. So I do have a concern about, you know, kind of a robust discussion happening on the floor with respect to this proposed ordinance. So, you know, I think we do need to express our opinions here. And I still am not in favor of this the way it's worded. I just think it's not crafted as narrowly as it should be for this sort of, you know, scheduling issue.
Thank you. I anticipate that report to the, you know, the moderator says, here are the committees, you know, does anybody have a report? And we've been primary committee on this thing. So that report, I anticipate, or I would like to have it sent out ahead of the meeting, and perhaps not have to read it. I'll talk to Seth about that, because I'd like to make the meeting as short as possible, and also, but at the same time, get as much information into the members' hands to make that debate easier. I also think that it may not come to the agenda, because the budget meeting, if it goes long, this is deliberately the last item, so that by agreement with Seth, it could get tossed, tabled on a date certain to be brought back. And I wouldn't feel bad about that at all if that happens.
Frank Scott had his hand up. Frank Scott had his hand up.
Yes, indeed.
And then Joe wants to
yes,
talk.
Scott, hello. Don't hear you.
Better? I'm just, since we're basically taking a roll call here, I'm basically on board with everybody. It's, the reasons are very, very specific, and then it has that broad catch-all. And if you're going to define it, define it. If not, if we want to give the moderator free rein, we can state that and don't have to give designated reasons. But it doesn't sound like our intent is to give the moderator free rein. And if they have the opportunity to define what's reasonable, we all know, you can't rely upon everyone going forward to act reasonable in interpreting that word. My 2 cents.
I think
That
Joe
is
wants to
kind of
talk,
what-
Frank.
Are there any other comments at this point?
This is Harry McLaughlin. Shall I speak for a minute or so? Frank? I think I'm unmuted.
Excuse me?
I'm in sympathy with the comments that I found it, and I think I had sent in some email comments. I was not, I think, at the meeting in March. But when I read this, I thought this is, it's ambiguous on its face. My reading is that the situations mentioned are kind of examples. That's like a preamble, like this, things could happen. But the operative part in giving the, reasonable cause at the matter, in something completely up to the moderator, it's like, maybe he planned a vacation that week. That's reasonable if you say, well, the moderator should be at the meeting. On the other hand, it's not one of the things enumerated. So I found it ambiguous, and I would say if it can be kicked over and we could revisit it, I would be in sympathy of that to tighten it up, if you will.
All right. If I may, I'd like to propose a motion. I think a chairman can do that, but we need a second. That in view of certain technical issues with this resolution, the TGS&A Committee recommends that it be tabled for further discussion.
Second.
Do we have a second?
I would second
Do we
that.
have discussion on this impromptu motion?
I think it's a good idea.
All right, I'll speak to it because of the difficulties of virtual meetings and such. The wordsmithing that would be necessary to straighten this thing out right now is daunting. So the path of success here would be to set it aside. We can wordsmith it over the next couple of weeks and bring it up at another meeting. There's no time stamp on this. Anyway. So I am speaking in favor of this motion to table. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, let's proceed to a vote. Those in favor of the motion on the floor, please raise their hand.
Count me in, Frank. I don't see the.
Of the visible ones, I say it's unanimous of the visible people. So I would say it's enough to carry it. Thank you very much. Of everybody who's visible, it said yes. Of the people who are on audio only.
Joe is the only one on audio only.
Yeah, I favor tabling it also.
All right. Well, then in that case, I will issue that report to the moderator, and we'll see how he handles it. Hearing in that we have no other business on the agenda, may we have a motion to adjourn?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Oh, please. Second. Look, thank you all very much. Thank you to Channel 79. And good night. This meeting is
Thank you,
closed
Frank.
at now 8:01.
Good night, all.
Good evening.
Good night, Frank.